I want to go a little bit more into this idea of sin as an adjustment, more into the body, but any questions while we're waiting on the three or so that are absent? Yes. Rich. Mike. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. You have to. The mic is necessary for the.
Power.
You got it. Power.
I was curious about something you mentioned early on, which you were saying that if you could see everyone without the judgment,
right?
Just to see everyone as they are, and I guess this is coming more from a head thing, a mind thing rather than a heart thing. If I ask this question through my heart, I know the answer, but I'm interested in what your answer is to the head part, which is, as human beings, we have this ability only to see certain wavelengths of light. We only have certain frequencies we can hear, through our ears. So it has limitations, and the wisdom of the universe created us that way. So when it comes to people and accepting people and seeing who they are, as we grow, we basically go through different stages in our life. Let's say you get to the point where you're interested in being around people who are kind and gentle and loving and caring. People who are not that way, that doesn't come through in their face. And maybe it's a way for us to say, you know what? This is the person or the type of person I need to be around at this point in my life, not to be wasting time because their growth is at a different level, and I can't just open myself up to every single person and be on some kind of Mother Teresa issue, So I'm just wondering about that. Is that something that, are you closing yourself off from learning also, or is it best suited to just allowing yourself to grow faster by being with those type of people that you recognize as being somewhere or something that you're have an affinity to?
Yeah, I got it. Well, we're all growing at different rates. And as Shanti said, I'm peopled out. So there may be times when we can move a little bit more deeply into those more difficult situations and accept the situations, and there may be times we need to back away. The Course really sort of sees this as I'm going to read a passage about this a little bit later, is that we're not all ready to accept everything. And you're right, we're not Mother Teresa, or neither was Mother Teresa, by the way. But we're not all Jesus. I'm not Jesus yet, but I am working toward Jesus. I'm headed toward enlightenment. So let me take what I can, and maybe I can take a little bit more and a little bit more as time goes by, so that there's less and less likely that I'm to fall into projection and attack thoughts and error. This is the spiritual growth phenomena that the Course is trying to. Actually, let me read you a passage from here. Let's see if I can show you. Go to page 13 in your booklet, and down at the bottom, the last quote there from the Course in Miracles. Okay, 13 at the bottom. Begins with the word prisoners. Prisoners bound with heavy chains for years, starved and emaciated, weak and exhausted, and with eyes so long cast down in darkness, they remember not the light, do not leap up in joy the instant they are made free. So what this is saying is, we're all really free, but we don't recognize it. We don't see it. We don't even see the light once the light is there. This is reflective of the Plato's analogy of the cave, right? And I'm assuming let me just reiterate that Plato's analogy of the cave in case you don't know it. So Plato in the Republic said he's trying to talk about different dimensions of reality and how we're kind of in a dark place, that there's a lighter world that we could see. So he says, what if we had a situation where there was men who were in a cave and they were sort of chained together and they have blindfolders on and they're in such a way that all they can do is look forward and see a wall in the cave, right? And what if there was a wall behind them and there was a fire behind that, and men were walking along behind the wall behind them with pots of different shapes and sizes on their heads, and that was casting shadows on the wall. Plato, thus in 400 BC, creates the first concept of a motion picture. Right? So it's you know, all, in other words, all they're aware of, there are two-dimensional reality. They can only see height and width, the shadow. Shadow has no 3 dimensions to it. It doesn't have the depth. It just has length and width, right? So this is all the world they see is this length and width. Now, then he says, what if we take one of these men up out of the cave and we bring him up into the light? He said, would he not at first have difficulty adjusting to this light, to this other world, this 3-dimensional world, and seeing, now keep in mind, this is all an analogy, but you know, the fact that there's another world there, but it's this, there's sunlight and flowers and butterflies. I mean, there's a world, you know, another world. Now, what if this guy were to go back down into the cave and try to tell his brothers about this other? Wouldn't they think he's crazy? Wouldn't they think that he's insane? Would they maybe not even try to kill him because he is insane, right? So, coming back to this here. So, prisoners bound with heavy chains for years, starved and emaciated, weak and exhausted, eyes so long cast down in darkness, they remember not the light. The Course is telling us there's another world. There's another world I want. That's actually a line from one of the lessons, right? And another phrase that is, this world has nothing that I want. You know, I mean, we think about this world as being precious, maybe. I mean, this is a very mixed bag world. I mean, this is a world of butterflies and flowers and rainbows, and on the other hand, this is a world of Auschwitz and bigger bombs and more and more destructions that are possibilities. So it's a very mixed and it's a very insane kind of a world. And the Course is saying, Lesson 49, you do not live here. This is why it's a dream. This is not your real home. There's this other home that's your real home. So what we're talking about is adjusting to this other reality. So we slowly begin to, and we do it by taking in as much of the insanity of the world as we can without seeing it as insanity. Okay, without labeling it as insane. And we see the insanity, but we don't invest in it. We don't make any investment. There's another line here in this section. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Go to page 11 for a second. And let's look at the section from the Course at the very top of 11. Okay. Have you ever wondered what the world is really like? How it would look through happy eyes? The world you see is but a judgment on yourself. It is not there at all. Right? It's really a matter of how we're choosing to see this insane world. As I was driving into the city today, I was listening to this particular chapter on a cassette, just as a prelude to being here, and I noticed the phrase that says, "The world, the holy sea, is beautiful." Now that seems very different from what I just read, right? But the world the holy see is beautiful. It's all about vision, not seeing, that's not perception, but vision, okay? And vision is not something which happens with the body's eyes. I mean, something in the physical sense, that's true. But the Course is trying to get us to see with eyes that are not these eyes. Just a second. So we're trying to see, if you will, with the heart from another level. But as with the prisoners that come out of the cave, it takes a while to adjust. We have to adjust to this other, the world, to the other way of seeing. We have to adjust to being able to see the world. The world, the holy see, is beautiful. So that it is beautiful. But it's beautiful to beautiful eyes. It's beautiful to the eyes that can see it as being beautiful. So that what would it be like to really be, and I don't mean this the wrong way, but really to be in love with everyone. I mean really to be in love with, I don't mean in a physical sense, but just to really, we're quite the opposite from that. We're very guarded and cautious about relationships and how close we can get to someone. We were just at this ashram this last week, and this last week rather, at a retreat, and the head of the ashram, who's a very, very good friend of mine from many, many years ago, was talking to me about some of the little problems that are going on there at the ashram. He said the problem right now is that they were dealing with at the Board of Trustees meeting that day was the question of personal space. And some people have felt as though their personal space had been invaded. The boundaries, we got to have, that's a place of, there may be some right there, but that's a place where we could get into insanity as well. You're in my boundary, right? You stay in my space. Right? Well, that's wanting walls and that's wanting isolation. On the other hand, people do violate boundaries. So we have to find a balance there, right?
John?
Yes, hon. No, I'm sorry. I know you just.
Just one sentence. It's not, as soon as we feel that someone invades our space, we have to start to take a look at it from maybe I have to expand mine. That's really very important because I think that's what we mean by holiness. It means wholeness, expanding to reach you. You're trying to reach me. I want to reach everybody. Don't you? You want to be reached by everybody. Try expanding your boundary.
Good. And Lily Katz here for.
I like the part in the Course where it is talking about a wall of skin around your mind.
It's in here. It's in this. Yeah, if I just, maybe we can read that. It's, well, maybe I can't turn to it real quick, but I know it's in this section here. Here it is. It's on the bottom of 21 in your booklet, okay? The bottom of 21. Yeah. The body is the ego's idol, the belief in sin made flesh, and then projected outward. This produces what seems to be a wall of flesh around the mind, keeping a prisoner in a tiny spot of space and time, beholding unto death, and given but an instant in which to sigh and grieve and die in honor of its master. Now, what that passage is actually saying is who you are, what you are, is not a body. You are not a body. not even for an instant, but it does appear though it lasts at least an instant. But that's all the body is. The body is like this wall of flesh around the mind. What you are is a mind. You are a mind, and the mind is a part of you that's eternal. An equivalent for mind is spirit. Mind and spirit are really the same thing, you know. And mind and spirit do not have dimension. I mean, they don't have 3 dimension. They're not as part of, it's not a part of space-time, which is why that part is a part of the eternal part. Okay, and that part can never be lost because that's always that's there. This part will be lost. In fact, is very soon. By very soon, I mean 20 years from now. A bunch of us are going to be out of here, and it won't make any difference. Because again, because of the fact that this is the dream, you could really see that what the whole course is talking about is, Ken once wrote a book called Awakening from the Dream. Well, you could say that it's kind of like struggling to awaken from the dream. You know, sometimes you're kind of struggling to waking up literally in the morning. Well, we're kind of in that struggle phase of awakening to the point where we can see only from this position. Now, it's possible to see from this position even here. That's when the world you see is beautiful. And that's when everyone is beautiful, even when the outside may not look beautiful. Because if we just look deep enough, we'll see that the beauty is in fact there, because that soul is there, and that cannot be lost. Now there was another chord. Did you raise your hand? Somebody did. Oh, it's Barry. Can we have a mic for? Okay, they're right here, next to you. Yeah, Barry, right here. Thank you.
Hello. Is this course really about listening to the voice within, which you call the Holy Spirit?
Yes.
And that maybe I'm making things too simplified in practicing this course, but is that basically it?
Yes. You got it. Right there. That's it.
I often mention this to another group I used to belong to, the same thing, but I said, takes an awful lot of courage to listen to that voice within. I guess it's basically saying, do the thing you fear, and the fear of death is certain.
Say the last phrase again.
Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain.
Okay, the death of fear is certain. That's true. Right, it will go away. Because it's not real. It's not real. I mean, what is the biggest fear we got? You were talking to me about this a little bit before class started today, Barry. You were talking about fear of getting old and dying.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so we have this fear about getting old and dying. Well, that's nothing. I mean, it's nothing in the sense that the leaving the dream, leaving the illusion, stepping away from this thing which seems so clearly to define me, and all the time, because this is not who you are. You do not live here. You live here. That's where, and your heart is connected to here.
I'm aware of the fact that when I heard the expression, be in this world but not of this world.
Exactly.
The problem is, how do you change your thinking where you really do that?
Okay. How do you practice this? How do you change your thinking so you actually do that? Number one is, first of all, it's simply the recognition of that you don't actually have any choice. Now, when I say you don't actually have any choice, by that I mean at some point you will. So seeing how at some point you will, you might as well go ahead and do it now. Because if you go ahead and do it now, then then you don't have to suffer with the delaying the process.
I don't understand what you mean, do it now.
Okay,
What
well,
are you doing?
You're letting it. All right, let me give you an illustration. Perfect illustration, right? I was once counseling a young woman who had come to me for counseling because she was really distraught over the fact that her boyfriend had left her. Okay? So in the process of talking, I said to her, you might recognize the fact that someday you will forgive him. Someday you'll let this go. And you could just let it go right now. And this very, very rarely happens. But I actually saw her expression on her face change. And she realized that that was true. And she just sort of sat with that for a minute, and then she said, you're right. Someday I will. So I could do it now. And not only that, but the counseling session ended with her saying, I don't think I need any more counseling.
Well, I'm curious. I've been led to believe from my previous spiritual practices that everything's always changing.
Right.
So here you can have this peak experience, which she's described this woman has. How long does it last?
Well, I'll tell you in her case, because I know what happened. She later became friends with this guy who married somebody else, and she married somebody else, and they continued to be friends throughout their lives. So, I mean, she let it go, and it just, there was a love there in the first place that it connected them. So if they could just see that without thinking that it had to be something that evolved into some sort of marriage or something, which it didn't have to do, and it worked. It worked. I mean, why can't that? Why can't we have a happy solution to these things, right? It's all a matter of holding on, whether I want to keep holding on to it or not. And now we got Lily Katz over here and Shanti, but Lily Katz first. Okay, all right. There you go. It doesn't matter where, as long as it gets done.
In the book Peace Pilgrim, she, I guess different people arrive at the same conclusion in different ways, but she walked 10,000 miles across the United States for the cause of peace, and in her journey, she made many discoveries, and there was a chart in her book that where she drew, she had these peaks and valleys, and then there were some plateaus, and as she was going along, there were more peaks and valleys, and higher and lower, but at a certain point, it just went up, and it just never came down again, because she reached that point where she had that kind of realization, and so I guess that's what we're working for.
Right.
Like
that's a good way to look at it. Actually, that ties into hold on, let me make a comment first, then you pass on. I read an article just a couple days ago. I have a subscription to, it's called Scientific American Mind. Anybody know this? It's really a good magazine. So anyhow, it was an article on happiness. And it was about happiness and age. And they had done this survey, who's happy, when are you the happiest in your life, and that sort of thing, at different ages, right? So what was really interesting, I thought, was about, it said that people are the happiest, so there were a couple of times. One was during like the 25 to 30 thing, where it seemed like people were pretty happy because they were pretty optimistic. They were optimistic about the future, that they would be able to do things, they were excited, they were full of energy, they were falling in love, or they were getting involved in careers, and they were just, things were, right, but then it started going down, right? And it actually got to the lowest point on the chart was 50. So around about 50 was the most unhappiest period, now this is an average, right? Most people's lives, and because at 50 they were kind of overburdened with debt and work and kids and responsibilities, and career was not necessarily going as they had hoped, and et cetera, et cetera. And then somewhere after it started going back up again. And it started going back up again because more and more they were getting to accept that this was okay, that this was reality. And initially it kind of peaks about, so 75. So 25 and 75, if you could sort of imagine, we're kind of like these points at which, at 75, it's like, leave it alone, the world is what it is. I've got my pension now or whatever. So I don't have to be, but I just thought it was interesting that, it was right there in the middle somewhere where the most responsibilities were, if you will, and it was weighing the heaviest on people. It was sort of that same, but that idea about acceptance again, right, was an important part of that. Now, there was Shanti again, and
I really wanted to respond to Barry's request, which I hear is a universal request. I want to see things differently, and I want you to show me how to do it now. Now, I hear this so regularly, and I get some affirmations here, a nod of a head. But, what I don't hear as much of is how many of you actually, from month to month, do the workbook? I want a show of hands. Do you find it any different in practicing on a fairly regular basis? Because the course is a course in mind training, and a self-study, not just reading the text as if it were a journal or a novel, Jesus' novel. So Barry, I think that the question that you asked about how to keep practicing it, and the course shows you the way. If he went to such lengths as to give us 30 chapters, 31, for a textbook, he gave us 274 actual lessons. It's 365, but there's a repeat,
repetition.
A repeat for review. We have to train ourselves. We buy the product. We say it really makes a lot of sense. I'll try it. But if you don't do it on a daily basis, incrementally, it's not just pick a lesson at random until you've gone through the workbook a dozen times. Okay.
Okay, Shanti's a real salesman for the workbook. And she's right, because it is a matter of practice. As we say, literally, practice makes perfect, and the course is really headed for perfection. Perfection is here. Perfection is the point at which there's no longer anything. There's no sin. There's nothing pulling you down, and you're able to maintain that vision. This is heaven, really. Okay, Barry.
First of all, I'd like to thank Shanti for her concern about my welfare. But what I want to say is everybody's different. I have two red strings at home to remind me the two most important things in my life, which I learned from my practice in Buddhism. And every time I look at those two red strings, I'm reminded of what's important for me, and those two red strings represent to be present and stillness. And when I practice that, I'm more at peace with myself. But I've also learned based on my own experience, not on what any book tells me, but on my own experience, I know that things are always changing. I'm not always present. I'm not always experiencing the stillness within me. And that's just the way it is.
Okay. All right, so both of you are right. I mean, it is a matter of experience. The Course is trying to help us to have an experience of God, experience of the truth, experience of love. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could talk about this. A mystical experience. or the kind of ultimate experience of union or reunion back with the mind, bringing the little mind back to the mind, the experience of heaven. A Course in Miracles says that a universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible but necessary. And, you know, a lot of my background of interest has also been in mysticism. And mysticism is an experience. But it's also the experience that this is listening to. I mean, this is leading to. By leading to, I mean the experience of oneness. That's one of the basic characteristics of a mystical experience, is that it's oneness. That it's an experience of wholeness, or experience of completeness.
What is this oneness? I asked that recently at a conference I was at.
Give him the mic.
I asked this question to a panel. I was recently at a conference, The Art of Dying, and given by the New York Open Center, and there's three members of the panel that mentioned the word, you talk about a one consciousness.
Right.
So I asked, what is this one consciousness?
Right.
Well, nothing resonated within me because it just was that way.
Right.
So I have the same feeling whenever you mention one consciousness. I have an idea of what it means by hearing Deepak Chopra, where I guess he was giving his audience, thousands of people, hope that eventually we will all join our mind with God's mind. Now, is that what you mean by one consciousness, or is this something else? Because everybody, because we all grew up under different conditions, we think differently. That's why life is an illusion.
Okay,
so, I mean, I'm sure if you ask a lot of the gurus, what is your version of what one consciousness means? If there were 100 gurus, they probably give you 100 different answers. So who's right?
Well, I rather suspect that there may be 100 different answers, but they'd all have some similar quality to them, insofar as that's been an experience that they've been able to experience. So let me say something about this, though. Okay, all right. It does mean going back to the mind of God, but the only way to do that is to get away from this little mind, or the insane mind, the ego mind, which is always pulling me down and telling me all kinds of terrible things. I'm bad, not good, get into trouble, look at the stupid choices that I've made and all that. Analogy that I used once before here in the class, which everybody can identify with and remember, a simple way to visually get this is to go on to YouTube and to type in starling murmuration. Remember we talked about this one day? If you just type starling murmuration. All right, so M-U-R-M-U-R-A-T-I. It's where hundreds of thousands of starling birds will be flying together at once, right? And they'll be going through there, and this looks like a whale. It looks like a tornado. It looks like a paisley print. It looks like whatever it is, but there's really just one mind. There's not like one bird in there saying, wings right, wings left. You know, there's just this instantaneous, the fact is they measured it. It happens at less than 1/15 of a second, right? That the twists and the turns and it already got. So there is a mind. Now this is crucial to understanding the Course. The Course says there is a mind. I'll use my chart here, this invisible chart. All right? So there's a mind. You are a part of that mind. You have always been a part of that mind. That is home. You want to be a part of that mind. You do not want to be separated. You do not want to be isolated as an individual off trying to fly along by yourself. It's great joy. It's like dancing. What they're doing is dancing, actually, right? And when you're doing it all together as in unison, in one mind, there's tremendous joy in that. The problem is our arrogance, our pride, that holds us into being a separated mind, which is broken. It is split off from that whole. So, and it doesn't, there's something inside everyone. They calls it like the little spark. There's this little spark in everyone that remembers the one. Actually, the way it talks about it, at one point in the Course, it talks about it as the little spark which is connected to what it calls the great rays. Now, think of the great rays for just a moment as being the sun. And think of yourself as being a sun beam, okay? So you're a part of this giant thing. This is just an illustration. But you, in a previous, I think it was chapter 18, we read about section about where it says, but the arrogance of this little sunbeam that thinks it's the sun. This little wave that thinks it's the ocean, right? In this incredible area, but that is also very lonely, that state. It feels broken off. That's why the greatest experience that we can have is the experience of union or reunion or connectedness with this mind which is there. And you know about this because you've talked about it. You talk about it in terms of the inner guidance. Or we talked about it here in terms of the Holy Spirit. Helen Schuckman, who was the scribe for the Course, said at one point that the major purpose of the Course was to help us to get in touch with that inner guidance. Now that inner guidance, and that's all this is trying to do, is to tell you to train the mind. Shanti's talking about training the mind. That's why we do the workbook lessons. We are training the mind to begin to see differently, because we have bought this world's way of thinking. That's why sin is an adjustment. We have adjusted to this world of sin. And we say, yes, this is a really sinful world, and I'm a part of this sin. And the Course in Miracles says, no, that's not true. That's all an illusion. The truth of the matter is that you're at home, and God, in fact, is you've never not been home with God. And that's why God doesn't even know about us as individuals, doesn't know about sin, doesn't know about sinners, because you're not. In God's view, you are His child, you're His holy child, you've always been home. You never left home. But you think you did. You know, you're dreaming that you're separated. You're dreaming that you're broken off and that it's not fun. So that's why it's a retraining the mind to get the mind back again. And now if we can give the mic to Lena.
I just have a quick experience that I'd like to share regarding personal guidance. So it was about a week ago. And as I was sitting in my bed doing my nighttime prayer, I began to really feel that my ego was so strong that I could no longer really control my thoughts and remain loving and positive. So as the Course says that the undoing process is not from us, I surrendered my thoughts and I said, Dear God, I no longer feel the strength to transform my thoughts into higher and more loving forms. Please help me. And as soon as I created my mind, I heard chapter 11. So I turned to chapter 11, and here was the first passage that I read. I was feeling really weary throughout the day. When you are weary, remember you have hurt yourself. Your comforter will rest you, but you cannot. You do not know how, for if you did, you could never have gone weary. And then further down the other page, it says, Oh, my child, if you knew what God wills for you, your joy would be complete. And what He wills has happened, for it was always true. So although, yes, this world always changes, my moods and my ability to control and to transform my thoughts changes. What I remain loyal to is my willingness to come back to that inner center of love, because then such miracles occur. And then one more thing that's helped me a lot, the Course says in chapter 30, do not fight yourself. If our resistance is strong and dedication weak, it's just means we're not ready for a specific principle. So I try to focus on what resonates with me, what provokes that inner light, that inner loving that I may share and strengthen within me. And then I leave the rest behind.
While we're talking about change for a second, let's keep in mind that change is very much a part of this world. It's part of this world because, well, we've got time, for example, and bodies age, and we go through seasons, etc. But that's not true up here. That's not true in eternity. In fact, if you will look up the dictionary, and I've looked in more than one dictionary, definition of eternity, it's a state or place of timelessness. Change can only happen in time. Change does not happen in eternity. I think it's kind of hard for us to understand because we're so caught in change and in time. Heaven is a place of timelessness, and again, that's the place. And now you know about this because you were talking to me about it a little bit earlier, and we all know about this because there are these moments, and this is what we're really kind of thirsting for, and it's the moments when the mind stops. I mean, when the mind really stops making up the world. Now, if you can have an experience where the mind stops making up the world, in other words, you stop projecting the world, you stop analyzing it, stop interpreting, and this can happen in different ways. It may come through meditation. It may come through, it's interesting that you talk about sitting on your bed because just this last week, one of the women who was at this retreat that we were on told an experience about sitting on her bed. It was at the end of her business work day, and she was home, and she's just sitting on the bed, and she actually had this experience of the world stopping. I mean, that there was just this, none of this making it up, none of stopping the analysis, stopping the interpretation, and just having this incredible sense of presence. Some of us know about this experience. It's happened to us through the use of psychotropic drugs. It doesn't have to happen that way. I'm not recommending it, but that's one of the things that happens. It stops the world. I mean, you just stop it because you just start seeing in a kind of a pure way because, first of all, what's happening is happening so incredibly. You realize you can't be making it up. You can't be analyzing it. All you can do is be watching it and be seeing. It happens to people involved in accidents. Sometimes people are in accidents. The world just stops because it is so traumatic, the event. It's as though you actually step outside. It's actually as though you're witnessing. That's another way to think about it. You're actually just sort of, you're seeing, but it's a kind of pure seeing. Most of us, most of the time, are so caught in the drama of the world, the story of the world, what's going on with our kids, what's going on at work, all that stuff that it keeps us from being able to see. Now, the Course is trying to get us to go to that same place too, and Shanti's right about one of the ways that works is by doing the workbook, because the workbook is also moving us in the direction. Often at the end of a lesson, you'll get to the end of the lesson, and the lesson will say, now be still. You know, so just now be still. Just be here. And when you can get really still, and you get really quiet, not because you necessarily force this on yourself, because it just kind of slips in, it just kind of comes in. Sometimes it just comes accidentally, or it comes for no reason at all. You're sitting on your deck, well, let's say, right, or something, and it's there, and you don't know where because it comes unbidden, so to speak, right? And then you see, and then you have knowledge. Then that knowledge creeps, and then you sort of you see the whole thing. You see the mystery. It's not like you're analyzing it, not like you're interpreting, but you just see, and you know. And what you know is everything's okay. God really is in his heaven. There really isn't anything to worry about. There's nothing I really have to do except be. I like in page 70 in the Course, it says, being is a state in which the mind is in constant communication with God. Just being, just pure being. That's what we have here. This is being. This is just pure being. That's what, again, if you read Anita Morjani's description, her experience was an experience of beingness. And it sounds arrogant to say that she was being one with God, but that was her experience, right? And that's where, that's home. That's being completely comfortable. That's being total love and knowing about the total love that's there. So in the meantime, most of us are down here fighting the fight of the world. And, you know, and sometimes you're really fighting the fight of the world. I mean, if you're in an insane state or you're reacting against the world, you're attacking the world, you're mad at the world, then you're totally trapped in this. It really is, it's insanity, a kind of certain insanity, which is, you think the world is your soap opera that's going on inside your head. And that soap opera doesn't even exist. God knows nothing about that soap opera because it's just an illusion. And God, there are no illusions in heaven. You don't get into heaven with any of your illusions. You only get back to heaven with an empty mind, right? And then it's like you're dancing with it's like you're part of the starlings. And we want to be home. We want to be having that experience. There's nothing forced about it. There's nothing that's difficult about it. You're not trying to do it. There's nothing you have to try to do. You just relax into it. And that's why it makes us, that's why I was just talking about acceptance, because acceptance is kind of a door to relaxing into it. Okay, Barry would like the mic again. Martin? Right here. Barry, yeah.
I studied Buddhism for 14 years or so. What would you say to the Buddha?
The Buddha? Go ahead.
Buddha. What would you say to him? He didn't believe in God. He saw no use for it. He sat under the Bodhi tree and he made up his mind that I'm not going to leave until I'm enlightened. And his practices have been going on for over 250 years. Mm-hmm. No, 2,500 years, 2,500 years.
Right.
Now, what would you say to him? Because he has an entirely different view of what being at peace with yourself is mm-hmm. than you do in what you just said about God.
Okay. So the Buddha's right. I've heard Ken Wapnick talk about this. In the long run, there's no God. God's a way of talking about this universal mind. It's just a word that we use to try to be able to distinguish. What we're going for eventually is a place where, first of all, there are no words. If there are no words, there's no concepts in the conceptual sense of the thing. There's a line in the Course that says, God does not understand words. Because it's not about that kind of, it's not language, but let's use another word. Let's talk about, there's a place in the Course, which I've talked about here several times, which is called the thinking of the universe, for lack of a better term. So there's a kind of thinking, there's kind of a mind. Okay, let's just use the word mind. You know, none of the words that we work will really work because they're words. Because again, we're talking about something that you've been trying to talk about, which is an experience. We are talking just a pure experience which defies words, and yet there's a kind of knowing, which again, which transcends words, but that's a kind of language even, but it's not like the language of this world. In 1976, when I had this incredible near-death experience, I described it as what was going as math music, or music math. it was like it all had kind of combined into one. It was like this sphere of music that I can't talk about it because it really transcended everything. But it was, but interesting, there was a dimension of connectionness and communication that was occurring there at the same time, right? Remember that being is a state in which the mind is in constant communication with everything that is. It's that communication, that connectedness. It's not like what we experience here in this world of space and time. There's no English or French or Chinese or anything else that we could. Music gets closer to it, math gets closer to it. But think of math and music being combined, and I can't even begin to. But it's there. It's there because the mystics tell us it's there, because people experience it, it's there, because people who have near-death experiences, that's what they have this experience. And then they come back, and one of the universal things that everyone who has this experience who comes back will say it's ineffable. Ineffable, of course, meaning that it just simply defies words, but we know it's true. Cora will tell you it's true, right? It really exists, and the level that we're of our little minds, and they're really little minds. After I had my experience in '76, I described it as the comparison was that of the difference between an ant and a human. And by an ant or human, I meant it was as though, an analogy I like to use is if an ant were right now to walk across my shoe and stop and turn its head up and look at this being, I have no idea what it is. An ant would have no idea what this thing is. Now there's a dimension of awareness in that ant, just like there's a dimension of awareness here, right? And then I thought it was really interesting that in Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven, his analogy, he called it the worm's eye view. Okay? So that was just think of what the worm's eye view is. The worm's eye view is an incredibly limited, and by the way, consciousness isn't the right word. Not in terms of A Course in Miracles, it's not. The better word is awareness. And the reason that the word consciousness isn't the right word is because consciousness implies subject-object. Consciousness implies that there's an observer and an observed, that there are two things, and there are not two things. When those starlings are doing that together, they're not really separate. They're not really even experiencing. There are within our visual thing. There's but they are not experiencing that. There's experiencing just one mind that's there. Let's take another break, and then we'll have when we come back. Okay. Heather would like to start. Heather's right here for.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to talking about stopping the mind, an experience I had.
Okay.
This was back in the 80s. My mother passed away very, very suddenly at 65, which sounds so young now.
Yeah, it is.
But, the family had gathered. They had lived on Cape Cod, and we were all grieving, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning one morning. I couldn't sleep, and I woke up and just went out and looked at the water. And I just had this moment, like in the midst of all this, when someone passes away, you're in the middle of all this chaos and this grief. And anyway, it was just it lasted a second. It was like pure stillness, pure peace. And it was like I knew she was okay. That there was nothing to worry about. And of course now it's just the memory of that experience, but I don't think I've ever felt such peace, and it lasted for an instant. And then I just went back to bed and went back to grieving and dealing with my mother's death.
What A Course in Miracles calls a holy instant.
The holy instant, yes.
Are these holy instants. And I might say too, Barry, with regard to all your many questions, that one of the problems we have with this is it's not a problem. It's analysis. It's trying to figure it out. It's interpretation, and it's not a matter of figuring it out. It's more like what happens with Heather, where there was just this something that stopped everything, you know, and that's why we have to get to this stop point, and from the stop point you have vision. Again, that's what the Course in Miracles is talking about. So turn to page 26 in your booklet for a moment, right? And I'm going to read there right into the section called the Vision of Sinlessness, beginning with the word vision. 26. And this relates to what Heather was just saying. Vision will come to you at first in glimpses. So Heather had a glimpse, right? And the glimpse, one of the phrases that she used about this was knowing. So she had this knowing. And that's one of the basic characteristics of these experiences, is you just know. Vision will come to you at first in glimpses, but they will be enough to show you what is given you who see your brother sinless. Now, sinlessness is really what we started talking about earlier today, and we also started talking about it in terms of sin as an adjustment, meaning that when we, just as to reiterate, we come into this world, we adjust to the idea of sin. We adjust to the idea that this is a sinful world and that we're seeing sin all over the place, including in ourselves and in others, right? This is where the churches got really hung up. The traditional Christianity, not just traditional Christianity, all the religions kind of get hung up here, some less so than others, but Muslims got really hung up on this one as well. A lot of judgment that slips in there, even though it says don't, but still, you know, it happens, right? It's less so in Buddhism and in Hinduism, but all right, to read this further. Truth is restored to you through your desire, as it was lost to you through your desire for something else. So the desire for something else was the desire for this world. The desire for separation, the desire for the body, the desire for independence, the desire to be on our own, the desire to do it my way instead of following the way, the pathway, right? Open the holy place that you closed off by valuing the something else, and what you never lost will quietly return. But you can never lose this. I've said that several times today. You can never lose the connection to God. You can never lose eternity. After all, eternity is eternity. And you can never lose your mind. The Course in Miracles says you cannot lose your soul, but you can temporarily lose your awareness of it. And it's sort of the degree to which we're happy in this world, in good part, depends upon the degree to which we have lost that, or the degree to which we remember that. So if you've lost your awareness of it, then this is a horrible place. This is a place where people take advantage of each other all the time, and you're right in there taking advantage. You know, you're out for yourself, and that's what matters, and it's survival, and that's all there is, right? Which is, the Course is saying that not all there is at all, right? That's the illusion. So back to this. I'm going to start back a sentence. Open the holy place that you chose by valuing the something else, and what was never lost will quietly return. It has been saved for you. Heaven has been saved for you. You cannot lose heaven. You cannot lose eternity. Vision would not be necessary had judgment not been made. That's a very important line, right? Vision, I mean, the seeing, pure seeing, non-judgmental seeing, pure awareness would not have been lost have judgment not been made. So the judgment jumped in and said, I'm separate, I'm different, I want, I need, I have to have, all those kinds of the I stuff, right? There is no I. The Course in Miracles is there is no ego. It simply doesn't exist. And yet the thing that we're terrified of more than anything else, and it's silly that we have this terror. I mean, it's literally laughable that we have this. Course says it's a joke to think that time could come to circumvent eternity. That's why it's laughable, right? Which means there is no time. Time, the world, illusion cannot circumvent eternity, cannot turn over eternity. The whole thing is just an illusion. Vision would not be necessary had judgment not been made. Desire now its whole undoing, and it is done for you. So just as desire for separation got us into this world, if you will, the desire for its undoing will begin to undo it. But you gotta wanna. I mean, you gotta wanna change it. You gotta wanna go home. You gotta want the transformation. You gotta wanna wake up. You gotta wanna stop living in this insane world and get out of this dream. And if you want it enough, we've talked in previous classes about how one of the things that happens is that we just get caught into this hypnotic way of living, which we talked about as sleepwalking through the world, and where you think that that's it. You know underneath that it's not, but you don't know how to fix it. You don't know how to get out of it. You don't know that there is another, that you could change your mind. It's so simple. It says that this is so incredibly simple. It's just a matter of changing your mind. It's just a matter of going the other way. Do we have a mic for Lily Cats here? Oh, here it is, Heather. All right, she's got it. She's got it. And now she's got two. You can talk out of both sides of your mouth.
There was a part in the Course I was trying to remember. I still can't remember the exact words, but it was something to the effect that it was either awareness or truth or something will dawn upon you of itself. That something to the effect that it can't be explained. Nobody can make you wake up, but it'll
Right.
come to you of itself.
Which is one of the reasons, in a way, say, Barry, that I can't answer your question. I mean, I can point to it, I can make suggestions, I can provide illustrations, but only you and only we individually, it will dawn on us. It will come to you, and you never know. It could be when, like with Lena there, you're just sitting on your bed, and it dawns on you. You see it. It could happen for absolutely no reason, no logical reason at all. And here comes a question.
Well, I understand that part of what you say because I experienced it twice.
There you go.
In 2000 and 2007, I went on both times on a 10-day meditation retreat in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And I felt like a lost soul in 2000. And then all of a sudden, I had this experience that was, the only way I can describe it was I experienced the kingdom of heaven within me.
Amen.
And it brought tears to my eyes when I was alone in a meditation hall, and I told a group about it. And in 2007, I also was on a 10-day meditation retreat, and all of a sudden I started meditating, and tears were flowing out of my eyes. And I felt the love and compassion for everybody on this planet. But I didn't know what was going on.
You don't have to know.
So I asked the teacher, I said, what was that all about? He said I was experiencing my true nature.
Very good.
But wait,
but, we got, you're a butt man. Come on, go ahead.
I asked one of the teachers who brought Buddhism to the United States and beyond, how can I regain those two peak experiences? So the basis of what he said, just keep meditating.
Right. You know what you need to do is go on a 10-day retreat.
Well, I think when I think of those two experiences, I think what made me get in touch with it was I was so completely relaxed in both instances that I just experienced my true nature.
Right. So
I wasn't caught up in the ego and all that other stuff.
Exactly. So that's what in Buddhism talks about an empty mind, right?
Right.
Right. So that's what we're talking about here too.
Well, while you're speaking of an empty mind, my Buddhist group had a workshop, emptiness is happiness, happiness is emptiness. And there was this highly respected monk that came all the way from Thailand to teach that class. So I asked him, how does emptiness enable me to deal with fear? So what he did was he showed us on the floor there were these tiles in the shape of a square. And he said, for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was, just look at the tile. Give your undivided attention to that tile.
Okay.
So I did that, and he looked at me, what happened? I said, I don't know, nothing happened. But now I understand it because I take this kind of experiences seriously. I'm trying to be at peace with myself. And now I understand that at times to calm my own mind, I use emptiness. I just focus on my breath.
Good.
And when there are no thoughts, when there's just a breath, there are no thoughts. When there are no thoughts, there's calmness. So
there's no problem.
Right. So a lot of times I remember what that monk just said.
Right.
And when I'm dealing with these disturbing thoughts, I just keep going with something that represents emptiness.
Right.
It could be my mantra. It could be my breath. It could be the stillness within me.
Right. Okay, so that's the same thing that the Course is saying. You said there's no thoughts. Another way that we could say that using Course in Miracles terminology, there's no world. Another phrase we could say, the Course says time and time again, there's nothing outside of you. Okay? So if there's nothing outside of you, it really means there's no problems, there's no difficulties, there's no world. Now, if you want to look at the world, you want to turn the TV on and check out the news, then it could look like there's a world and there's all kinds of things to be concerned and worried about, but that's only there, within the context of the dream. Actually, death, I think, is probably a good, people who have near-death experiences, there's no world. There's no world. I mean, you're not even in the world. You don't have anything to do with the world. The world, from that standpoint, was the dream. But what you're awakening to makes that dream look like so nothingness, like the dream you had last night when you were in your bed. It's really, it was nothing. And you wake up in the morning, and especially if it's a, quote, bad dream, the first thing you say is, well, thank God that was just a dream. And then praise God, the Lord, it's over. Meaning, I'm not there. And so in that sense, it really does. It's all a matter of where the mind is at, where I choose to let my mind be drawn to. And what the Course is saying, what this whole chapter is really about, It's about how much we allow our minds to be drawn to say, though, there's a problem out there. That person is a problem. That is a sinner. This situation needs to be fixed, and I'm going to fix it. And the worst example of it is we're going to declare war on those people. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to go over there and we're going to kill 100,000 of them. That's what we'll do, and that will really get us into a mess. I read recently a thing on the internet. I may have mentioned this last time. I don't know that when Bush went into Iraq, 62%, this was the figure, of the advisors in the Pentagon said, don't do it. Don't do it. It will lead to a backlash, and the backlash will be terrorism. Terrorism. And what happened? We have terrorism, right? I mean, it's the insanity of the ego. The insanity of the ego says, no, I need to do this thing. You know, I need to fix this problem that's out there in the world. But you're seeing the problem out there. You're saying the problem is there. The problem isn't there. I mean, and we saw that kind of literally manifest, you know, the literally manifest. The thing that's needed is to love this situation. What have we gone in there with? Aid, education, hospitals. I mean, my God, what a different kind of world, and for a fraction of the cost, right? But that's why this is an insane world, because we keep buying. But you got, the thing to do is to see it's in me. The insanity's in me, and it's in me every time I make one of those choices. The choice that says, hit them, you know, let them know how you really feel about it, you know. I mean, and then we got a major thing going on. And then we continue to live in an insane world. All the Course is trying to do is to help us see this world differently, but it all starts here. And if I can't see it differently, in Billy's case, with my next door neighbor, you know, and sometimes it is the next door neighbor that's driving you crazy in some sort of literal sense, or my wife, or my kids, or whatever it is, right? Then, pardon?
But that's all me.
Yes, it is.
The terror. That's an interesting word, terror. Terrorism. Because if you pick the mic.
Can you, hold on, Shanti. First we get the mic.
Pearls of wisdom, we shouldn't miss a word.
Yeah.
Terrorism. It's a very interesting word because it reflects fear. Terror.
Right.
Terror is fear. But constantly you've been saying this. It's all out there. Everything. In other words, one of the things I like to say, if you want to know a person's faults, and you know, you look around and say, shall I trust him? Shall I not? Listen to the way he talks about another. Mm-hmm. And you will discover a great deal about that person, but you'll also discover a great deal about yourself. But I think that charity belongs at home, you know, we say. So is terrorism. We terrify our kids. We terrify our loved ones. We terrify our neighbors. We're living in a cocoon, man-made by me, by you, us. That's what we mean by we're all one. We're all doing the same thing, from which we now want to dissociate ourselves. Lots of luck. Just says a little willingness, remember, just a little willingness. We can do it.
After 9/11, the sermon that I gave, that was on the Sunday after 9/11, I was at a church here in the city at the time, was called Healing the Terrorist Within, by T-E-R-R-O-R, the error, healing the error within, the terrorist within. Right, so I had to, you know, to really look at the part of me that would want to make war, right? And, well, anyhow, that was a sermon. So, only 15 minutes away from our closing. So at this point, I'd like to see if any of you have those, would like to share your, we do about 5 minutes of sharing of our cards for anybody who has a...
And I wanted to make one point, John. And isn't that the whole process of this is to, our sole responsibility that we have as individuals is to accept the undoing of everything that we believe is true. You know, not rather asking or trying to figure it out or analyzing it, but just to be still and to accept that if I'm willing to look at everything differently in this world, that it will be undone for me. Isn't that the sole responsibility we all have?
It says that very clearly. Yeah. The sole responsibility, S-O-L-E. You could say S-O-U-L as well. The sole responsibilities. All right. Okay, some of you want to share some of your, let's have a mic on each side of you.
I'll start with me.
And you'll start with you.
Let's start with me.
Let's start with you.
Why don't we start with me?
Why don't we start with you?
There are many answers you have already received, but have not yet heard.
All right.
And that's what the but. If there's a but, we don't hear the answer.
Why don't we do it this way? Just kind of keep the mic on this side for a few minutes, and then we'll work with the mic on this side for a few minutes. Oh, yeah?
What is not love is always fear and nothing else.
All right, think about that. What is not love is always fear. And what the Course is saying is the fear is absolutely unnecessary. The fear is the insanity. And why do we go into Iraq? Fear. Of what? Go ahead, Lily. Terror, yeah.
I am alone in nothing. Everything I think or say or do teaches all the universe.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? So that's the one mind again. And pass it to the back row, to behind you. John, anybody back there in that row want to share?
With love in you, you have no need except to extend it.
Isn't that nice? I mean, you know, that's why we love the Course. This one line.
One line.
Never forget you give but to yourself. Who understands what giving means must laugh at the idea of sacrifice.
Right. I'm going to just emphasize that we give to ourselves. So in giving to ourselves, also, if what we're giving the world is terrorism, I mean, what we're giving the world is air, if we're saying the world is sin, what we're really saying is that this is inside me. And that's kind of what Shanti was saying. If I'm seeing it out there, it's because it's in me. If I'm seeing a beautiful world, it's because I'm capable of seeing a beautiful world, regardless of what the world looks like. Heather, you want to share?
The mind that serves the Holy Spirit is unlimited forever, in all ways beyond the laws of time and space, unbound by any preconceptions, and with strength and power to do whatever it is asked.
Thank you. Okay, I'm on the back. Nico?
When a brother behaves insanely, you can heal him only by perceiving the sanity in him.
See, that's so much about what we're talking about today. It's really, how am I going to look at this? I can heal him only by perceiving the sanity. The ego wants to see the insanity. The ego wants to jump on the insanity and say, your fault, you did it, you called it wrong, you got it wrong, rather than saying, you're right. Or accepting responsibility, which we'll talk about next time. Anthony?
Think but an instant just on this. You can behold the holiness God gave his Son, and never need you think that there is something else you to see.
Right. Okay, let's go to this side of the room for a little bit here.
Truth can only be experienced. It cannot be described, and it cannot be explained. Truth will dawn upon you of itself.
So that's this truth up here that we're talking about, that we say there just aren't words for it. George?
All things work together for good. There are no exceptions, except in the ego's judgment.
Right. See, there's just clarity after clarity after clarity. Yeah? Michael?
I think this actually might be from today's lesson, if I'm not mistaken. It is quite possible to listen to God's voice all through the day without interrupting your regular activities in any way. The part of your mind in which truth abides is in constant communication with God, whether you are aware of it or not.
It's from lesson 49.
Oh.
As God sent me to you, so will I send you to others, and I will go to them with you, so you can teach them peace and union.
It's always about relationship and connection and discovering we are one. Go ahead.
The habit of engaging with God and His creations is easily made if you actively refuse to let your mind slip away. The problem is not one of concentration. It is the belief that no one, including yourself, is worth consistent effort.
Yes, that's the desire to do it right. Rich?
All anger is nothing more than an attempt to make someone feel guilty.
Yeah, we could do a whole session just on the thought of making somebody else feel guilty. Is the insanity of that. Doris?
Under his teaching, every relationship becomes a lesson in love.
Anybody else?
Yes.
All right. No. Okay.
Oh, wait.
Let's go to our.
You got to do this. You got to do this.
We got to do this.
Yeah, we really do, because this is so beautiful. Truly a wonderful thing to leave off on. There is a place in you where there is perfect peace. There is a place in you where nothing is impossible. There is a place in you where the strength of God abides.
Thanks.
Isn't that beautiful?
Okay.
Believe
All right. Okay, just put it down. All right, we're going to do a little meditation. We always do one of the lessons from this is from 68. Take a couple of deep breaths, relax, be very present. Love holds no grievances. You who were created by love like itself can hold no grievances and know yourself. To hold a grievance is to forget who you are. To hold a grievance is to see yourself as a body. To hold a grievance is to let the ego rule your mind and condemn the body to death. Perhaps you do not fully realize just what holding grievances does to your mind. It seems to split you off from your source and make you unlike Him. It makes you believe that He is like what you think you have become, for no one can conceive of his Creator as unlike Himself. Love holds no grievances. Shut off from yourself, which remains aware of its likeness to its Creator, yourself seems to sleep, while the part of your mind that weaves illusion in its sleep appears to be awake. Can all this arise from holding grievances? Oh, yes. For he who holds grievances denies he was created by love, and his Creator has become fearful to him in his dream of hate. Who can dream of hatred and not fear God? Love holds no grievances. It is sure that those who hold grievances will redefine God in their own image, as it is certain that God created them like Himself and defined them as part of Him. It is as sure that those who hold grievances will suffer guilt, as it is certain that those who forgive will find peace. It is assured that those who hold grievances will forget who they are, as it is certain that those who forgive will remember. Love holds no grievances. Would you not be willing to relinquish your grievances if you believed all this were so? Perhaps you do not think you can let your grievances go. That, however, is simply a matter of motivation. Try to find out how you would feel without them. If you would succeed even by ever so little, there will never be a problem in motivation ever again. Love holds no grievances. Search your mind for those against whom you hold what you regard as a major grievance. Some of these will be quite easy to find. Then think of the seemingly minor grievances you hold against those you like, and even think you love. It will quickly become apparent that there is no one against whom you do not cherish grievance of some sort. This has left you alone in all the universe and your perception of yourself. Love holds no grievances. Determine now to see all these people as friends. Say to them all, thinking of each one in turn as you do so, I would see you as my friend, that I may remember you are part of me and come to know myself. Try to think of yourself as completely at peace with everyone and everything, safe in a world that protects you and loves you, that you love in return. Try to feel safety surrounding you, hovering over you and holding you up. Try to believe, however briefly, that nothing can harm you in any way. Tell yourself, love holds no grievances. When I let all my grievances go, I will know I am perfectly safe. Whenever any thought of grievances arise against anyone, physically present or not, say to yourself, love holds no grievances. Let me not betray myself. I would wake to myself by laying all my grievances aside and awakening to Him. Love holds no grievances. Slowly and gently, when you're ready, open your eyes, come back to the room, take that little booklet that I gave you and turn to the back, the very, very back. And we say this together, pausing at each comma and stopping at each period. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the mind, which you created and which you love. Amen. Thanks for being with us. Our next meeting is on July the 12th. And remember, Scott Calistine is going to be here for half of the time. You'll really enjoy Scott. And I'll lead the 80 minutes worth of a class, and then we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back, and Scott will be here for the rest of the day. There's a few of us that go out for to get a bite to eat. If you'd like to join us, why please let us know and come along to Saigon Market. It's just a couple blocks away. Thank you.